This is all pretty funny because I made a video all about how AMD cards are great, but no one buys them. And here I am, the guy that bought an Nvidia graphics card. I'm sitting here with an RTX 3080 with all of its 10 gigabytes of VRAM, and Resident Evil 4 is looking great right now.
And you start up here and this is consistent behavior, it just crashes.
I promise you, actually I don't own the game, but I know that VRAM is very quickly becoming a huge limitation with this graphics card. Also, but you're wondering why I'm wearing a hat? Honestly, it's just because I'm not super happy with my hair right now. It's funny because whenever people wear just like ball caps or whatever, pretty much always just to hide your hair. Before we get into the meat of this video and talk about the reasons I still decided to go with Nvidia over AMD, I was curious, do you guys prefer me putting gameplay and me just being a voiceover, or do you prefer me just talking into the camera? Because really either way works. Sometimes I have some really good gameplay I just want to show you guys. So that's why I show you it.
I got you.
Come on, get in there. Come on,
Let's get him.
Get him, Mercy. Hey, you got her. Pretty much always been an Nvidia guy, and that came for a few reasons. I started out with the GTX 770 back in 2016, and then I got a 1070 I think in 2018 or 2019. In those generations, AMD just wasn't as competitive at the mid-range, especially during the 770. Like AMD just wasn't really there. And then the 1070, I wanted something, I ended up buying it used, and that's why it was so much later. I buy all my graphics cards used because I'm after that value, and the 1070 was more powerful than like the RX 480 and 580, which were great value cards, but the 1070 was faster, and that's why I went with it. But now we look at me and I have an RTX 3080 when AMD with their 6000 series was pretty freaking competitive in value, and in a lot of cases, whenever people recommend it, AMD is always the value king.
For example, the RX 6950 XT at $700, this AMD flagship from the RDNA 2 era also beats the 4070 Ti and 7900 XT by 11% in terms of cost per frame.
At least for gaming. But when I was shopping in September and October, I was looking at used graphics cards. RTX 3080s were going for about $550 US in my area. And then AMD cards, 6800 XT. This is about the budget I was shopping in. And 6800 XTs were going for about $500. In my head, I was just kind of like, it's only a $50 difference to go for Nvidia. I'm just going to pay the Nvidia tax. Part of that could definitely be that over the history of just having Nvidia cards, like I was comfortable with it. These cards perform really, really similarly in rasterization in a lot of games, but it was really only two reasons. And the first one was Cuda support, but I use a couple productivity apps that use the graphics card in my computer, and that is DaVinci Resolve and Cuda. Cuda is pretty light. It's similar to like Photoshop, so it doesn't use it that heavily. But in Resolve, I was scared that an AMD card wouldn't be able to accelerate things in it, and I would just be relying on my CPU for everything. I didn't want to take that risk, even though I'd saw benchmarks on AMD cards and they were looking pretty good in competitive renders and everything. I paid the extra $50 to just have that peace of mind that it's gonna be supported in Resolve. Little did I know that my RTX 3080 still renders slower than my GTX 1070, and it's something to do with drivers. I have no clue, but I'm on the free version of DaVinci Resolve, by the way, if you're curious. And then the second reason was ray tracing performance. In my head, I was thinking, when I upgrade this graphics card, I'm paying over $500 for a card. I want to try ray tracing at that point, so I got Nvidia because that was actually a thing that I weighed on me heavily when I bought it. Little did I know, once I tried ray tracing, I realized that I don't want to use it like at all, like ever, pretty much. Except in really niche cases where FPS isn't really a problem, but nowadays I'm playing more like esports titles and ray tracing isn't even in those games. Not to mention the FPS hit that you get, and honestly, in a lot of cases, there isn't that much of a difference in visuals. It's kind of up to personal preference. And like nowadays, I don't really see a good reason to use ray tracing. I made a whole video about this. Until we get like mainstream support where like you could just turn on RT and really not worry about performance impact, and everybody has graphics cards that support it and support it well. Until we're at that point, I really don't see developers being able to focus on it as heavily when not many people even use it when it comes down to it. The last thing I know that a lot of you guys are thinking is that you didn't get an AMD card because of the drivers, right? Honestly, I didn't care about the drivers. Even back then in September, October, when I was buying this in 2022, I wasn't even as educated on where AMD was in this space. I just didn't care, honestly. I figured just buying an AMD card, like, it's not going to be an unusable piece of garbage. They've been around for a long time, and it seemed like they were competitive with Nvidia, so their drivers are probably good enough to use. I've been using an AMD CPU all the way since like 2017, and I just upgraded to a Ryzen 5900X. So honestly, I've trusted their CPUs for a while, and I have a laptop that I had got previously before upgrading my graphics card, and it has an APU in it that is Ryzen and a Radeon combined, and I got to use Adrenaline and the Relive software, and honestly, I was pretty impressed with that whole package. Nothing to really complain about. As much as people like to rag on AMD drivers, I really don't think it was a limiting factor for me, at least. I've had a decent amount of problems with Nvidia drivers. I don't really think it'd be that much different with AMD, especially the rendering slower in DaVinci Resolve. I made a whole video about that issue as well, so if you want to check that out. So this makes me think, and it probably makes you guys think as well, do I regret buying an Nvidia GPU? Especially because everything that I mentioned pretty much got written off as being a problem. And I do regret buying an Nvidia GPU. I do regret not trying something new. Like, there's this stagnation where you can just get too comfortable with your computer and everything, the software that you have. I regret not stepping out of what I was used to. It's not really that much deeper than that. I wish I got AMD just to try it. I've been hearing that AMD has been good lately, and I feel like I should have tested it, but I ended up getting a 3080, and now I'm regretting the VRAM thing. Because of the type of games I play, VRAM usually isn't an issue. Usually I'm playing like Overwatch, I don't know, other games like Raft and Fortnite and stuff, and VRAM isn't really a problem. You know, now I'm sitting here like, wow, I could have got AMD. I actually was thinking about it like pretty recently. I was like I just want to get an RX 6800 XT just to try it, because that'd be very similar performance to the 3080, and I'd be able to try all the software and everything to see like if I could put my money where my mouth is. It's hard to justify buying another graphics card purely to test it. Honestly, my next graphics card upgrade needs to have AV1 encoding in it, and if I was just getting a 6800 XT beneficially for my workflow and the channel and everything, it wouldn't help anything. It would just give me a test to be curious, and I don't got the money laying around to buy another $500 graphics card. So this leads me to conclude that this idea that people don't buy AMD graphics cards, even though they do tend to be pretty nice value nowadays, especially in the mid-range that a lot of people are buying in, the whole concept is completely true. And what I'm thinking is that hopefully over time, AMD will just start to build up market share and become more popular so that they can break the stigma that, oh, they have awful drivers, or they're just not supported in creative apps or anything, like nobody can use them, like whatever. Hopefully over time they can break the stigmas that they have. But part of me fears that they're not going to be able to do that, because at least in the current generation, they're just matching Nvidia's pricing, and it just seems like graphics cards are becoming this like price premium commodity that people can get. I don't think their value is enough that people are going to buy them. It's the same thing with me. Like, it's only $50 more to get the Nvidia card, so I bought the Nvidia card. Anyways, that is why I still bought an Nvidia card, and I kind of regret it to this day. So if you found this interesting, make sure to like, sub, all that stuff. I actually ran a poll where there's a statistically like significant amount of people that said that they own an Nvidia card and they want to get AMD. And to mention the Cuda support from earlier, I ran another poll asking if people use Cuda in their daily workflow, because I actually surprisingly don't. I thought DaVinci Resolve would use it more, but it really doesn't. Most people said that they don't. As much as like this like loud minority will complain about AMD not getting as much software support with like obviously Cuda, isn't really that much of a people to really sway the market. Obviously it exists, and having a hardware acceleration advantage in certain programs with Cuda is definitely an advantage to the brand, but it isn't like that much that is going to flip the market share. Yeah, that was another poll I ran. Pretty interesting stuff. But what are you guys' thoughts? And honestly, let's not get all fanboy here. Like, we're just talking about value. See you guys in the comments. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.